Welcome to Meaningful Magical Math. Today, I'd like to show you how to compare fractions using common denominators. Let's start with an example of 2/5 and 4/5. We already see these are the same size pieces out of the whole, fifths. But we notice that we have 2 pieces out of 5 on this fraction and 4 pieces out of 5 on this fraction. And because we know that 2 is less than 4, then we know that 2/5 is less than 4/5. That's pretty easy. But what about if we have something like this? 2/3 and 5/6. We can see already that we're not talking about the same size pieces of the whole. We're talking about thirds and sixths. But we also know we can make equivalent fractions from fractions to rename them using a common denominator. So in this case, let's think about thirds and sixths. Let's think about multiples of 3, multiples of 6, and let's come up with a common multiple of 3 and 6. So if I'm thinking of threes, counting by threes, I would have the multiples 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, etc. And if I'm counting by sixes, my multiples would be 6, 12, 18, etc. And already I see that 6 is a common multiple of both. In fact, it's the least common multiple of both. And so I can choose to rewrite my fractions as multiples, or as with denominators of 6. Now 5/6 is already written as with 6 as its denominator. So let's rewrite 2/3 as sixths. So how do I go from 2/3 to 6? What whole fraction can I multiply 2/3 by to give me sixths? Well, let's see. I know that 3 times 2 is 6. So I can use the whole fraction 2 over 2 to multiply my numerator 2 by 2 to give me 4/6. Let me change that to make that red so we see that fraction as 4/6. So now I see that I've renamed 2/3. Its equivalent fraction is 4/6. And now because my denominators are the same, I can easily compare just like I did in the first example. Since 4/6 is less since 4 is less than 5, my numerator 4 is less than 5. Since 4 is less than 5, I know that 4/6 is less than 5/6. And of course, since 4/6 is another name for 2/3, that means 2/3 is less than 5/6. Let's try another example. Let's try 4/5 and 3/4. Again, we see different denominators, but that doesn't disturb me because I know we can create equivalent fractions using the denominators of 5 and 4. We can come up with a common multiple of both. So let's think about that. Let's think about our multiples of 4, and let's think about our multiples of 5. And what is the first multiple they both have in common, the least common multiple? Well, counting by 4s, my multiples would be 4, 8, 12. 4 times 3 is 12. 4 times 4 is 16. 4 times 5 is 20, etc. And counting by 5s, 5, 10, 15, 20. There it is. 20 is a multiple of both. And so I can create equivalent fractions. I can create equivalent fractions for each of these with a denominator of 20. So let's do that. Let's start with 3/4. What whole fraction can I multiply by 3/4 to give me 20ths? Well, let's see. 4 times 5 is 20. And so if I use the whole fraction 5/5, I can multiply my numerator 3 times 5, and I will have 15 20ths. And now let's look over here at 4/5. What whole fraction can I multiply 4/5 by to give me 20ths? Well, 5 times 4 is 20. And so I can use the whole fraction, 4/4. Do you see it there? And come up with 20ths. So 4 times 4, my numerator 4 times 4 is 16. Excuse me, let's write that in red. So 16 20ths is what I've renamed 4/5 as. So let's see. 3/4 we said is 15 20ths and 4/5 is 16 20ths. Because I have the same denominator, I can now compare the numerators only. I can compare 16 to 15. And I know that 16 is greater than 15, so that means 16 20ths is greater than 15 20ths. And because 16 20ths is also equivalent to 4/5, and 15 20ths is also equivalent to 3/4, I know that 4/5 is greater than 3/4. I hope this has helped you understand how to compare fractions using common denominators.